Hello and welcome to the Smells Like Infinite Sadness podcast. I'm your host, Michael Taylor. For those of you who don't know, I run the website, smellslikeinfinitesadness.com. It's a blog covering the best alternative rock from the 80s and 90s up to present day. I'm a proud middle-aged Gen Xer who is still obsessed with the music of his youth and loves to talk about it. And today we have a very special guest who I'm really excited to talk to. We'll be talking to Dave Wyndorf, the frontman of Monster Magnet. Monster Magnet is set to release their 13th studio album. It's called Mindf, which is got to be my choice for the album title of the year. It comes out March 23rd via Napalm Records. Wyndorf has described Mindf as being both a good times and rock for rock's sake's record, while also being very reflective of today's chaotic political climate. And I spoke to Wyndorf about the new album. We talked about how heavy current events played into his lyrical process, also the musical influences that inspired Mindf. We also discussed the band's legacy, as well as their touring plans for later this year. Wyndorf is a fascinating, very smart guy to talk to, so we had a really great conversation. So enjoy the interview, and stay tuned afterwards when I'll be playing a new song off the new album. So first off, I wanted to say I really been enjoying the new album. I like how kind of in your face it is and direct and kind of stripped down. I've been really digging it.
Oh, thanks, man. Thank you.
I was reading in the Mindf manifesto that you attached to the promotional materials for the album that you describe it as a rock for rock's sake album with a Detroit edge to it. And I was wondering if this kind of stripped down approach is maybe like a reaction against the past two albums, which were Milking the Stars and Cobras and Fire, which were, of course, kind of drastic psychedelic reimaginings of The Last Patrol and Mastermind. So is that kind of a reaction against that, or how did you decide to go for a more kind of stripped down album this time around?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I wanted to get something done that could it feels good. You know, because I'm in it. Like, I realize I'm going to make a lot of records, and I want to keep on making records, and the only way to really do that is to just kind of go with your gut, with where the energy is going to be, according to how much energy you expended on the last one, or what kind of energy. So in order to remain enthusiastic about doing another one, it's usually kind of the other way around. You know, you just want to do the opposite, or something like the opposite. You just want to, I mean, when I say you, I say me. I just want to be excited about making records all the time. So if I do three, one big long form record, and I'm like, yeah, I'm into all this shit. This is great. Let's make this sound. I don't care if it's 11 minutes long. It's fucking awesome. After doing all that, my first reaction is, yeah, that was fun. Now I never want to do that again. I am so sick of doing this. I go out on the road, and we play some shows, and they're like, hey, it would be nice if we could just fucking rock. Maybe do a record that takes 2 weeks in the studio rather than, like 2 months of mixing and all this stuff. It's just a natural reaction to the previous action.
And I was also reading that you said that, before you did the album, before you started writing the lyrics, and you had this initial plan for kind of a good times record that was kind of, carefree and very escapist. And then, of course, the election happened. And I was wondering, how did that affect your lyrical process, and how immediately were you like, I had to kind of change course for the lyrical aspect of it?
Yeah, it was shitty timing for me because, really, I just wanted to make a good time record, like a sex, drugs, and rock and roll record. Like, this thing doesn't have to mean anything. It doesn't have to be from any time. It doesn't have to be me. Most of the time I write a record, I'm reflecting on what's around me. And like a writer, I was kind of taught this way, to write from the heart. Even though Monster Magnet songs may sound fantastical to your average listener, the stuff is really written from the heart. It's just me just kind of messing around with words to describe how I feel. And I thought that this time, like a good sex, drugs, and rock and roll album, meaning I would sing songs not about myself, but about scenarios, just cool shit, like, I want to fuck shit up, that kind of stuff. I want to set a building on fire. I want to fuck 22 girls. I want to do this, simple rock and roll things. And I was all set to do it, and then the Trump thing started to happen. While we were, I forget what I was doing, but the music was written, and I was like, oh, well, this won't really happen, and then Brexit happened, and then Trump actually did get elected, and I was like, wow, I'm not going to let that shit get to me, I followed it like anybody else, and my timing was, when I had scheduled out the time to write these words after tracking leads in the studio, was dead on when he got elected. And I was like, well, I can't escape it now. I'm stuck with this thing. It's like burning through my brain, like anybody else who cares about that kind of thing. I was watching the news every day. You know, it's unprecedented that's such an inept oaf. You could actually, you know, it kind of proves to everybody that the whole country is kind of asleep at the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's the real takeaway from this. Oh, people really don't give a fuck. They would vote. There's enough people in the world that would vote like a giraffe into office if the giraffe was wearing their sign. You know, it'd be like, well, I like it. This seems cool. He's saying what I want to say. Yeah, but it's a giraffe. Don't talk about that. It's my giraffe. So that freaked me out. And of course, I continued to try to write this record that was cool and rock and roll because the music was telling me to write that. The music wasn't telling me to write, you know, like political scenario. The music didn't say, write me as a political song or write me as that. It just wasn't telling me that. And I didn't have any other way to go. I had to like try to write those songs and to fit what I was feeling at the same time, which is why if you're lyrically in the songs, I'll try to have uplifting choruses and I'll try, it'll sound like it's really, really happy or as happy as it could be. But then if you look in the lyrics, there's all like just words like lies and I'm always complaining about my brain. You know, songs come up sounding the same. Mindfucker, brainwashed. It's all this stuff. I said, all right, that's the way it's going to be. It's just going to be a slightly odd lyrics. You know, I'm going to try to fit my sex, drugs, and rock and roll in there, but sometimes it's going to show itself for what it is. And then I thought when it was done, which was really quickly, because I didn't want to beat myself up over it too much, it would just make it worse. You know, I don't want to sound like Rage Against the Machine. Mm-hmm. You know, nothing against Rage Against the Machine, but Monster Man has never been like, we're going to sing about politics because like we know what we're doing, you know, because I do not know what I'm doing. I just have an opinion like anybody else. So in the end, I looked back and I said, well, okay, that's an honest representation of a man having somewhat of a nervous breakdown, watching, you know, just half kidding. Yeah, that sounds like somebody who's like a little bit paranoid. In my dream world, the world of 2018 in another dimension would have songs that mimicked, that reflected life, current life at all times on all the radio stations. You know, it's not happening today, but why wouldn't there be a record called Mindfucker in 2018? Of course there should be, right? You know, it's like, yeah, 2018, you know, and the big hit is Mindfucker. And that's the way I looked at it. Of course there's a song called Mindfucker. Of course there's an album called Mindfucker. It's 2018.
And do you remember the first song that you came up with the lyrics for that? And also, when did you come up with the title, which of course is an amazing title? That was,
It was all pretty quick. I mean, it happened in about a week. I just set them up one, you know, just like I did the words, the music. It was just like, all right, I gave myself a week to do it. First week, I just knocked off after 4 days because stuff was coming back. It sounded like the op-ed page of the New York Times. It was not good. It's like this is not cool. This isn't rock and roll, you know? It's like rock and roll songs, man. I take pride in including the word baby as many times as I can in a fucking song, you know? It's got to feel like a real rock and roll song. This is not metal fantasy. And, you know, there's a big distinction, you know? So I think I was trying to write the songs, trying to write the words as I wrote the songs, which is mostly in sequence to the album. Mm-hmm. I actually wrote the music in sequence. First time ever. Here's the first song. Here's the second song. Here's the third song. And so I tried to do it that way. Yeah, in the sequence of the record, I just kept saying, like, when I was writing this stuff, I was like, okay, here's the first song of a record. Maybe this will work. Maybe I can, like, write one. Here's song number one. Oh, okay, here's song number two. What should come after that? I was trying to write like a live set of music to try to get some sort of like set continuity to it. Thinking that, you know, I always think that hopefully I can keep people listening to to the album without fast forwarding.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, that's what you don't want. At least that's in the old days. That's what you didn't want people picking up the needle. I'm old enough to remember when it was, you know, pretty much just vinyl and the CDs. And you didn't want people fast forwarding or picking up the needle. You wanted to keep people there, you know, for as long as possible. So the sequence is really important. And that's the way I wrote it so musically, and that's the way I try to write it lyrically. I think I wrote lyrically, I actually wrote the first 3 songs in sequence as well. Got to Mindfucker, and it just sounded good. You know, I just hung around my kitchen just singing like a monkey, just blah, 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 baby, baby, baby. Oh, Mindfucker, mine was like, that's good, and it made complete sense. Mindfucker is one of those words that's been around since I was like 14 years old. You know, that's what my friends would say at the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey. But that ending was a mindfucker, wasn't it? Yeah. It's the go-to Beavis and Butthead phrase for anything when people are like confusing you on purpose, mm-hmm. or even not on purpose. You know, it's also very common when you know a woman like fucked with your head, or you thought a woman was fucking your head. She's a mindfucker, man. You know. Anything, it's a good blame word. It's like, I didn't understand it, therefore it must be a mindfucker. And it just sounded good. And that's why I put it in.
So did the title come first, or did the song come first? And then when you played the song, you're like, okay, this is definitely got to be the title. Did it kind of jump out at you like that, or?
I listened to the music and then just started like singing along like an ape and making up words, just singing them. And then when the chorus came, I just started singing, "You're a mindfucker, baby." You know, and I was like, well, of course that's what it must be. And I was like, it just all came like that. And then I wrote the words to go with that. It didn't even concern me what the words of the song were about, as long as I had the chorus at that point. It was one of those songs. I was like, it doesn't even matter what the rest of the stuff would be. I mean, of course it does, and I made sure it did. But you know, I wanted to use the word mindfucker. But I also didn't want to point it completely towards politics and go, it's 2018 and it's a mindfucker, baby. You know, I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to make it some way to use it so people could use that word in a song any way they wanted to. So I put it in the romantic context, and that was fine.
And you said this was the first time you've ever written an album in sequence. What inspired that approach? When did you get the idea to try that?
Playing live. I'm playing live, and I was watching the guys, Bob, Phil, Chris, and Garrett, you know, the members of Monster Man are like fucking awesome. You know, they know all the stuff. You know, we worked together for a real long while now, you know. I've been through a bunch of different members, but these guys are the best. And we were doing older Magnus stuff that was less psychedelic, was straight ahead rock. And I noticed how much they liked playing it. It was like in their wheelhouse, you know. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting on stage, or standing on stage in Germany, like, man, these fucking guys are good, you know. It was great. It's a good feeling when you listen to your own band. You're like, wow, these guys are fucking great. And then a couple of days later, riding on the bus, I'm like, what am I talking about? You know, this is not a problem to write the next record. So I was thinking what I should do. I'll just write it for these guys. I was just thinking of them. It's like, how would this go in a set? Us playing a live set, these particular guys playing a live set, and they just set to work after that. It kind of worked. I was really surprised. I never thought it would work. I thought it was just a device to get me writing, but it actually worked. I mean, I think I got to about 5 songs before the first 5 songs were actually written in sequence, and then the rest of it I had to throw out. But it worked well enough to get me going. And
going back to that note, in the press release, you also said that this was the best lineup you've ever worked with. And so when you got a lineup like you have right now, does it help inspire your songwriting as well? Do you write a certain way when you have a different lineup? Does it kind of inspire how you write?
I never had. In the past, I usually don't. I just kind of go into my world and hope that it'll turn out better later. You know, I'm a limited musician, So I really, really super, super depend on whoever I'm playing with. I mean, obviously, no man is an island. But I always had faith that it would work, that it would work out some way. Some way I would get what I was looking for. In this case, I mean, in the old days, I didn't know exactly what I was going to get from my guys.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't even consider it. This is the first time I actually considered it, and it's way more fun this way.
And I was really digging Ejection off a new album, and I just actually realized recently that it was a cover. Robert Calvert of Hawkwind, if I have that correct?
Yeah, Robert Calvert, former singer of Hawkwind.
And I know Hawkwind's been a big influence on you. I just was wondering, when did you decide to choose this cover, and what made you decide to put it on the album?
Well, for one thing, I could cover everything off that album. He had an album called Captain Lockheed and the Starfighters, which is one of the most bizarre concept albums of all time. It's just fucking awesome. And it's been one of my favorites since I was a little kid. Nobody ever heard of this record. It's one of those ones where you're like, you ever hear Captain Lockheed? No. But it's really, really good. And it's just so particular to its own odd concept, about the fighter jets and the post-war German Air Force and crashing planes and gremlins. It's just totally out there. I don't know what these guys were thinking, how anybody could be into this, because it doesn't relate to rock fans or anybody. It probably only relates to like odd, obscure history buffs, which makes it even cooler. And it's the guys on the album are like Hawkwind guys and Pink Fairy, so it rocks. I could cover every song of their record, have no problem. This was just like in the bag, like one of those in the bag songs for me that I always wanted to record. So I was thinking B-sides. We'll do a B-side. Maybe we'll do Ejection. I went in to put it down, started recording it. I was like, that's got to be on the record. That's, record needs something like this. It's straight up, major chords, rock and roll. And I was like, that's a fucking hit, if they exist anymore. So put it on the record.
And I know you also mentioned that this Detroit edge, it was kind of the proto-punk sound you were going for on the album. You can really kind of hear the kind of the Stooges MC5 vibe and some stuff.
Yep.
Are those two bands that have figured heavily on the album, and what other artists do you think kind of factored into your mindset on this one?
Yeah, those two guys. I mean, when I think Detroit sound, that's what I think of. That and Grand Funk Railroad was actually in there too. It doesn't show itself probably as much, but yeah, Grand Funk Railroad, Alice Cooper, early Alice Cooper group. From like Love It to Death period and School's Out,
mm-hmm.
Killer. They were out in Detroit at the same time. Really guitar-oriented rock, and most of that stuff, the Detroit stuff, it really swung in a way. It wasn't just hard rock; it was hard rock and roll, and that's quite different from the British thing. British was like heavy, for the most part, at least the stuff that we're talking about, heavy rock. But it wasn't. It was bluesy sometimes, but it was never like for most part rock and roll, except for Zeppelin. So the Detroit thing had a kind of a nasty whine to it, almost like a mutt, like an underdog kind of, almost punk rock. That's why they call it proto-punk. And that's what I was really trying to get, is the kind of that proto-punk attitude, which sometimes just straight choppy chords, straight choppy chords, big choruses, and really whiny, fuzzy guitars. Decidedly lo-fi to get the mood going. It would have been different if I had recorded the record like super, metal or something like that. It wouldn't have had its thing. That's what I get from the Detroit thing. And those bands, it's interesting because, those bands didn't do anything. Except for Grand Funk, they didn't really do much when they came out.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't that popular. Which always makes me want to hear more of it. And I think that's why I write it. It's like if that stuff would have been huge forever, I probably wouldn't be I wouldn't even be thinking about it. But it's never been overplayed in my eyes. It's like my roots, people have their roots in the music you listen to when you're 11 or 12 and it sticks with you forever. That stuff sticks with me.
Well, I think, when I hear you interview like a lot of, rock musicians, they always say the same old stuff, Led Zeppelin, Eric Clapton. I think it's always refreshing when, you have an artist that has kind of more underrated and obscure influence. I think the music comes out a lot more exciting and experimental to me as a result.
Yeah, well, thanks, man. It's weird. It's like I was influenced by those guys too, as much, but I think I was after that. I was really came of teenage consciousness when you first start really getting it. And I guess I don't know how old you are when you really started getting it, but it's usually about like 14, where you start to get it earlier, but then about 14 you can actually formulate opinion that you can
exactly.
You're like, all right, fucking yeah, this is what I am. And by that point, I think for me it was like 71 or 72. So most of the 60s, while it was still there, was for people that were older than me, say 30 or 25 or 30, generation gap. So my music was anything that was coming out new. And that was, of course, Zeppelin, Sabbath, that stuff. But there was this whole stream of bands that came out emulating them or inspired by them that didn't go anywhere. They just didn't make it in the business, but they put out a couple albums. To me, that was the shit. I was like, nobody's ever going to find out about these bands except for me. I had that whole little kid thing where this is my band. You go through
exactly.
This is fucking my band, dude. Nobody ever heard of them. The Secret Weapon. And I wasn't making up the quality. I mean, the quality really was there. Bands were experimenting like crazy back then. All different styles. I mean, and I was glomming onto the space, kind of post-psychedelic space rock proto-punk, but at the same time, everybody else was going nuts. It was different music every day. So I went for the underdogs, I was like, wow, nobody ever heard this before. And there seemed to be a lot of them. It was like Sir Lord Baltimore and Dust and Captain Beyond, million British bands. It's fucking awesome. And it never left me, even though my first band was a punk band in 76. When I finally got old enough to do it, I was part of the punk scene and in CBGBs and stuff. But in my head, it never left me that that first, it's like your first love or first romance. And when you're a kid, it's hard to get rid of that stuff. And sure enough, it's still there. It's still coming out.
I think my favorite song off the new album is "I'm God." It's just got a really cool feel to it, and I love the lyrics.
Right,
and I was reading them. I looked at the lyric sheet, and you say, "When I made you, I also made the stars, and they turned out fine. Well, you keep wrecking the car, and all you slops have a lot of nerve, and then at times is all you deserve."
Yeah.
And I think that kind of sums up where we're at in 2018. It feels
totally.
It feels like
totally like if God's up there, he's like, some of you kids are really fucked up.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys fucked up. I got you're awful lucky. I don't just push the button and fry, make you guys go supernova. But maybe I'll walk away. Maybe I'll just walk away. But in either case, you're kind of on your own. You're embarrassing me. I made the stars and they're fine. They're beautiful in the twinkle, and you guys just keep fucking it up. Amazing.
And
I mean, that's the point I was during that inauguration week. I was like, I don't know. How am I supposed to express myself? Okay, I'll just pretend I'll write a song from God's perspective.
And I mean, I don't know how you feel. I know everything feels so shaky right now. Every day seems like, is this going to be the day we all kind of go up in flames, or we don't really know.
Yeah.
Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future, and how does that kind of shape your art?
Well, usually I'm totally optimistic, and I'm cynical enough to protect myself in the modern world, so I'm not, exactly a full-blown hippie going it'll all be cool, dude, just looking. I'm going to go down and get my vapes, I'm going to get my vape weed. So I'm cynical. I come from punk rock, as well. At the same time, I'm very aware that at the core of mankind, there is as much good as there is bad. So I'm hoping, I'm thinking that there's some way we can learn from all this, and this isn't the road to doomsday. if we don't learn a lesson from this, then we kind of deserve it. I mean, there's nothing to learn from this, the whole thing, except for, it's like, sometimes you gotta pay attention before you make moves like this. Like, hey, let's vote this guy in. It'll be fine. It'll be great. And this is beyond politics. It's beyond political idealism. This is just like, is there somebody can do a job, or there's somebody that can't? Politically, I tend to go towards the left because it's more fair. I'm just about being fair. That's it. It's like I don't bring ideology into it too much. It's like, just be fair to other humans. It's pretty easy to figure out, and you have to follow that. Be fair to other humans. Make sure the poor people are fed. We're going to get nowhere from keeping poor people down, And you got to be able to learn to live together. All that shit that you should know instinctively. But, I guess every once in a while the fucking rednecks take over.
Yeah.
And that's what we got now. It's like redneck America. America, love it or leave it, all over again, the whole thing. It's like, we don't, there's no other way. We operate from fear and operate from paranoia. And that's basically the thing, We're justified. We're justified because we're just looking out for people. And it's like, no, you're not. You know what it's all about. And people are scared. Well, I think we'll make it out. Cooler heads will prevail. All I know that right now, there's not very many cool heads involved in this.
No.
Especially not in the government. And right next to them is TV news, which, TV news is a giant mess. It's just on all fronts. On all fronts. It's a crazy money-making machine that's out of control. They don't know how to report the news. All they know how to report is confrontation. That's get the ratings. So, typical American, we look at everything as some sort of football game or gotcha contest. That's what TV news is like. It's a gotcha contest. And it's like, we don't need the gotcha thing now. We need some slow and thorough explanation of truth of the facts as we know them. Don't need people yelling at each other. I think this is this. It's like fucking Andy Griffith up there. I just don't watch it. It's nuts. Just read the paper. Just read the newspapers. Yeah, it's embarrassing too, man. I mean, I go all over the world. I'm an American citizen. I always consider myself, when called for, to be a good ambassador for America. I love this country. I love what it represents. I love what it's given us and what it's given the world. Even with its faults, I always thought we had way more goods than we had faults. It's a really good example to the rest of the world of how people can move forward being more or less fair and and having a lot of stuff. Our standard of living is so much higher than anybody else's. It's our duty to be the good guys. And now that's pretty much right from the top, is like, well, fuck being a good guy. That's pretty much what Trump is saying. Fuck that. We'll just be good guys to us. Everybody else, kind of fuck you. No matter how he backpedals on it. That's the message. And that ain't a good message, man. That's pretty much telling everybody, like, well, you're all on your own. All that global village shit. Fuck that. We're gonna roll the borders back to 1939 and pretend all that shit didn't happen. And we'll just, good luck. It's a recipe for fucking world disaster, is what it is. You know what I mean? The world ain't that big. So I'm just hoping that people will realize that. They'll go into the history books and go, this was tried before. All this stuff he's talking about, this attitude has been tried before in the United States, and it didn't work. And even more, it's been tried in Europe in the 30s, and that didn't work either. It ended horribly.
But do you think, I know you mentioned the manifesto, again, I bring that up because it's I really like reading that, but you mentioned that, stupid is the new smart and doesn't even pay to think. So do you think that, I guess in a culture where you've kind of downplayed intellectualism and social media has taken over such a presence where people kind of get lost in the cycle of reading stuff that isn't accurate, that facts just don't even matter anymore at this point?
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't matter to the guys that are using them as weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like the guys that are using them as weapons, which is mainly the far right, and probably fringe groups of all fringe. Basically, when things like this, when the center gets weird, and the president's obviously a nut, like, hey, the guy's like the old man in the barber shop. I think cops should have guns on their hats. You know what I think? I think today that it's like pretty nuts. When that happens, it opens the doors to every fringe group. So all the people towards the center, which is America's always been best when it's run from the center, that allows people to be individual on all sides of it. They don't have to be at the center, but they can go out there and be as kooky as they want and explore themselves and do what they happen to be and be individuals, because the people running the place are like level-headed. When they aren't on either side, that's when things get funky. That's when things get really weird, because it empowers basically nuts and huge ideologues to pretty much run anything up the flagpole. And the stuff they're running up the flagpole these days are insane, like, multi-billion-dollar walls around the country. Like, what is this, fucking Escape from New York? It's like, you know what I mean? Hey, it's like, we'll do it. It'll be great. And, you just think that stuff through, and you think about the amount of money that it would take to do stuff like that and how ineffective it would really be in the end. But nobody, they just go for the idea of it. What was the question that you asked? I got off on this.
I was just basically talking about how we kind of live in a culture where facts have been downplayed to this point.
Oh, right. So you can run ideas like that, and they work because they're very effective, because there hasn't been a good example of cooler heads going, wait a second, you want to talk about this, these more or less almost impossible ideas? You could talk about it on your own time, but not on the national stage, because really right now we have mouths to feed, or we have an economy to balance, and we want to make sure that real things get done. But far-right guys in fringe groups, they're not interested in actually getting anything done. They're just interested in throwing a monkey wrench into everything. So they don't need facts. They need just facts that'll suit them. They need answers that'll suit them. They don't want to sit around and make sense. So it actually, for them, it pays to lie. It pays to lie. It's like the message is lie big. If you're going to lie big. Lie big and lie often, all the time. Just keep on going. And just keep everybody mad. And definitely drink your own Kool-Aid. And I think that's what the internet has afforded a lot of people, good and bad.
Yeah.
An opportunity to drink their own Kool-Aid, get high on it, and not have to physically suffer the repercussions for that kind of stupid talk. If all the stuff that went on the internet in the last 8 or 10 years had gone on in public meetings, just face-to-face, like a 10-hour public meeting, believe me, this shit would not be going on, because normal people would go, are you fucking out of your mind? What did you just say? And they'd talk it out, and they'd realize, yes, okay, I got a little hot. Now, it's like arguments and overheated rhetoric are the headlines. And I think people read them as like what's really going on. It's like, this happened today. No, this was just a fight over something. The headlines, the newspapers report, first they report a story, and with as many facts as they can get, which usually aren't a lot in the beginning. The next headline is not a report talking about what else happened in that story. It's a report about someone else's opinion of the last story.
Mm-hmm.
I think this means the end of the world. And the next thing you know, the headline is, end of the world? It's like, wait a second. No, this is some idiot. Some idiot said it was going to be the end of the world. Not, is it the end of the world? And that's not a question now. The question is, they're not sticking to the stories. I think they're going for as many clicks as possible. And especially on the news, it's a ratings game. They can't help themselves. So almost everybody's being taught, go ahead and lie. It kind of works. It keeps you in the game. And that's the thing that pisses me off the most. It's like, lying should not be an easy way to stay in the game. That should be, always a thing. Like, man, you got to walk it like you talk it. You can't just talk it. And these guys, especially the Trump guys, that's all they do is talk. It's just all talk. Crazy talk, too. I mean, it could be, and it's crazy, hateful talk. So, yeah, stupid is the new smart. They've proven it. It's disgusting. I win. Then I guess in kind of an American thing where everybody basically looks at things as if it's some sort of a football game, and that if the points are scored by the end of like this round or like a boxing match, if somebody got the most points in, they're somehow win. And they've looked at it like some people look at it as, they don't look at it as bullyism or bullshit. They look at it as, well, they're a winner. I think that's why some people look at Trump as a winner, because he had his way.
Survival of the fittest.
It's pretty scary, because if you look back in history, everybody who's behaved this way usually goes down pretty bad. They usually go down pretty bad. I mean, eventually, how much can you bullshit before you get called out?
Mm-hmm.
No, I like calm, boring presidents.
Me too.
Nice, boring, calm president who I kind of agree with or don't agree with. I don't mind taking time for life to advance, progressive politics to get better at what they're doing. I don't need any rush jobs. I mean, it's easy to wish for that, but fuck, man. When any of these guys try to ramrod something, bad things happen. Bad things are happening now.
And I think, when we're talking about how there really is kind of no respite or from the 24/7 news onslaught, I think escapism is really important right now. And to me, when I think of escapism, musical escapism, Monster Magnet always kind of comes to mind for me, because you have this ability through your music and your lyrics to really kind of take people to another place and away from their troubles. You've kind of got these, very outside sci-fi kind of comic book, mindscapes, soundscapes that you work with. And is that something that you intentionally try to do to offer some escape? And is that a therapeutic to you as well? I was wondering if that kind of gives you a release.
No, I mean, that's cool you say that, man. Well, thanks. I don't think that hard about it. I usually think about like, what's the best way for me to explain how I'm thinking. Again, I was kind of taught myself, or somehow one word on the line, believe that you should write what you feel. And I've never been good at screenplays. Like Iron Maiden or something like that. That's all like screenplays. That's a true escapism. I'm going to take, the writers, they take themselves completely out of the picture. I mean, they write a story about, whatever. Mm-hmm. I always fit it into my own life, but I was always embarrassed about it being too boring. So I would pour over it and speak through the vernacular of all my favorite stuff, all my favorite visual stuff, which would be B culture, comic books, science fiction, religion works too, anything that would perhaps elevate the meaning of the song, or definitely somehow visually decorate the song from the words that I had originally chosen, which were pretty boring. If I were ever to pare it all down, my lyrics would be like bad country and western song. I woke up today and missed my girl. I'm too embarrassed to say that, so I have to go. I woke up today and there's a giant sucking void in the cosmos. Like just drama it up. But it turned into this kind of ersatz kind of poetry, evocative kind of thing that worked for me, and it fit the music. It was like, the words have to fit the music, and if it wants to take people away, it can. Or if somebody wants to look deeper and go, oh, actually, this is just some guy sitting on a hood of his car, like worrying. They could do that too. It's always important to have like two different ways to go and listen to the song. Mm-hmm. The fact that it turned into be a bit of escapism was really cool to me, because it made me very happy, because I realized that the people that did listen to the music were interpreting the lyrics in somewhat different ways, which is a good sign. You know, I never just wanted to go out and like, this is the way it is. Don't think about anything. This is exactly what I wanted to say. No, sometimes I want people to go, I'd rather them own it. You know, I'd rather have the person go, well, this is what I think this song is saying, and I agree with this, I agree with that. So it's worked out pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's what makes music so personal to people is they can kind of, you know, craft it to, you know, whatever they're thinking at the time, and it, you know, kind of.
Yeah, dude, I've discovered like year after year as I do this, like the record's never over until it belongs to someone, and they're the final editor. You know what I mean? I mean, I may think I'm in control of this thing, but I'm really not. In the end, there's one more person, one more contributor to this thing, and that's the person that goes, this sucks, and never listens to it again. Or the person that says, you know what I mean? It's like, hey, you do what you do, and then you hope, you know, you pray to the fucking Odin or whoever that somebody gets something out of it.
And does it always kind of surprise you when you do put an album out, how people interpret it? Do you ever have like one way you think it's going to go, then it goes a complete, you know, left turn?
Totally. It's fantastic. It's great. It always really gets me. And it's weird. Never really was in this for quote unquote hits, you know, so it wasn't about, for me, it wasn't about getting hits on the radio and playing that game. I didn't think I was good enough, so I was figuring I just couldn't see myself as being that much of a craftsman, you know, to kind of like point it in that direction. So this has always been just throwing stuff out there and just hoping that somebody somewhere gets it in one sort of way. And every once in a while, commercially, it comes up and it's successful too. So that would surprise me. And that's really still on how they're perceiving it. Mm-hmm. It had nothing to do with me and my intent. You know, it's cool. You know, music is an awesome thing. It's also like hard to control once you put your soul into it. Then it's like, it's not a control thing anymore. It's just like, well, you have to go with your instinct and hope that it works out for somebody else. I love that factor of it.
And of course, one thing I really like about the new album too is it's got such a, you know, in your face presence. So it's definitely gonna be one that you're gonna be, you know, able to have in a live context is gonna be really powerful. And I'm sure you guys are gonna be doing a lot of European dates, but I have to wonder if you're gonna do any American dates as well. Do you have any North American plans at all? Or?
Yeah, we're talking about. Well, right now when the record comes out, which is like in 2 weeks, we're doing 3 shows on the East Coast. The Music Hall of Williamsburg in Brooklyn, Starland Ballroom in New Jersey, and the Fillmore Theater in Philadelphia. That's just when the record comes out. And then a month later, we go on a full-on headline tour of Europe. And then now we're just setting up a full-on tour of the United States, which will probably happen in September.
Well, I've got my fingers crossed for an Austin show. I saw you guys here a few years ago. Would you play Austin?
We'll definitely come back to Austin, man. Texas is one of the best places. Texas fucking knows how to rock. Texas consistently puts out cool rock bands. You know what I mean? I mean, still, it's fucking, Texas is the home of the guitar. It's one of the last places in America where people play, you know, consistently turns out cool guitar players. You know what I mean? I mean, you don't see any fucking cool fuzzbox wearing motherfuckers from Oregon. You know what I mean? Like, you hear that badass fuzz player from Oregon? No. But Texas, you know, there's always cool shit. And Texas has a history, you know, going back to the moving sidewalks, pre-fucking ZZ Top, you know, psychedelic moving sidewalks, blood rock, you know, it's awesome.
Well, definitely hope to see you guys down here. And I think that wraps up all my questions. Is there anything you wanted to add about the new album before we wrap up, or you wanted to tell fans?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to me today, Dave. It's been a real pleasure.
Cool. You too, dude. Pleasure talking to you. Bye.
So a big thanks to Dave Wyndorf for taking the time out for this interview. Visit my website, smellslikeInfinitesadness.com. You can read my review of Mindfucker, as well as an interview I did with Dave a few years back. And as promised, we're going to close with the new song, I Am God, which if you're on Anchor FM, you can listen to via the Spotify link. So check that out, see what you think, and take care, and I'll talk to you soon.